This episode, Cicero's Guide to Aging from the Axiom and Vessel series, is brought to you by Vizkard Studio.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We cut through the noise, gather the sources, and pull out the best bits of knowledge for you. Today, we're tackling a topic that, well, let's face it, often makes us a bit uneasy in our world that's so focused on youth. Getting older. We hear so much about anti-aging, staying young forever. But what if there's a totally different, maybe even uplifting way to think about the second half of life? We're going back, way back over 2,000 years to the legendary Roman statesman Marcus Tullius Cicero. We're diving into his work De Senectute, which translates nicely for us today as How to Grow Old, Ancient Wisdom for the Second Half of Life.
Yeah, and it's really crucial to get the background here. When Cicero wrote this around 45 BC, things were, well, they were tough for him. He was in his early 60s. His daughter Tullia, whom he adored, had just died. He'd been kind of pushed out of politics by Caesar's rise. So this isn't some detached philosopher writing from an ivory tower. This is Cicero grappling with real loss, trying to find meaning, trying to find solace.
That context makes it so much more powerful, doesn't it? And here's something that really challenges how we might think about the past.
Yeah.
We tend to picture ancient times and think, well, everyone died young.
Right, that's the common idea. But while losing children was tragically common, the sources show that if you actually made it to adulthood in Rome, you stood a pretty decent chance of hitting your 60s, 70s, maybe even older. Old age was absolutely a thing people experienced and talked about.
So it wasn't some rare exception. It was a known phase of life.
Exactly. And Cicero, he wanted to paint a, let's say, broader picture of old age. He didn't want people just resigning themselves to decline. He uses this dialogue format with the respected elder Cato as his main voice to show that these later years, they can be a time for growth, for completeness. He really takes on the common complaints about aging one by one.
Okay, so that's our plan for this deep dive. We're going to pull out those key pieces of wisdom from Cicero. We want to help you maybe rethink aging a bit, share some surprising facts, and perhaps leave you feeling, well, not just informed, but maybe even a little bit more positive about your own later years. Let's get into it.
So Cato, Cicero's mouthpiece, he starts by acknowledging how gloomy most people felt about old age back then. The standard view was, it's awful, you can't do anything, you get sick, you lose life's pleasures, and you're constantly worried about dying. Cicero, through Cato, plans to refute all of that.
And the very first point is so proactive, it feels incredibly modern. He basically says, a good old age. That starts when you're young. It's all about cultivating things like moderation, wisdom, clear thinking, basically enjoying life properly at every stage.
He's pretty blunt about it, too. Miserable young people do not become happier as they grow older. You can't just expect happiness to magically appear later if you haven't built the foundation. Yeah, and he talks about proper seasons to life. It's a beautiful idea. Nature has different stages, different joys for different times. Trying to just, cling on to youth forever. It's like fighting nature itself. And he says point blank, if you fight nature, you will lose. You have to embrace the flow.
Okay, so if aging is natural, what about that first big complaint Cato tackles? That old age takes us away from an active life. He really pushes back on this. Like, what do we even mean by active?
Exactly. He argues that the greatest achievements don't come from physical strength or speed. They come from wisdom, character, and sober judgment.
He gives examples, right?
He does. Roman examples people would know, like Quintus Maximus, the general who wore down Hannibal, how, not by charging in, but through patience, through strategy, he was older, wiser. Or think about Appius Claudius Caecus. Old, blind even, but his speech. It swayed the entire Senate against making peace with Pyrrhus. That's mental power, not physical.
It makes me think of that analogy he uses the pilot on the ship.
Oh, that's a great one.
Right. The pilot's just sitting there steering while the young sailors are scrambling around doing all the heavy lifting. But the pilot's quiet wisdom, his judgment, that's far more valuable than all the physical effort.
Absolutely. It shows how things like giving counsel, having authority, these can actually increase with age. I mean, look at the word senate, senatus in Latin. It comes directly from senex, meaning old man or elder.
Huh, I never knew that.
Yeah. And in Sparta, too, the highest offices, they called the holders elders. There's this built-in respect for the experience that comes with age.
Okay, but here's a big one for us today. What about memory? The fear that your mind just fades.
Cato hits that head on, too. He says memory only fades if you don't exercise it. Or maybe if you weren't that sharp to begin with. And he gives these incredible examples. Sophocles, the playwright, still writing amazing tragedies way into his old age.
Didn't his sons try to say he was incompetent?
They did, took him to court. And his defense, he just stood there and read from his latest play, Oedipus at Colonus. Case dismissed. What a legend.
Wow. And there are others too.
Oh yeah. Gordius of Leontini lived to be 107, and he never stopped studying or working. And Cato himself, Cicero's hero in the dialogue, he learned Greek when he was an old man. And he apparently had this daily memory exercise, recalling everything he'd said, heard, and done each day.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Maybe we underestimate how much mental fitness we can maintain if we keep challenging ourselves.
And that leads to another key point. Older people have so much genuine wisdom to share, stuff you can only learn through living. It's a benefit to the young.
He gives that lovely example of the old farmers, too.
Yes, in the Sabine countryside, planting trees they knew they'd never see bear fruit, planting for the use of another age.
That shows such foresight, such connection to the future, it's an active contribution, just in a different way.
Okay, so that's the activity argument. Next up, the second complaint. Old age weakens the body. And Cato doesn't deny this, of course. He mentions Milo of Croton, the wrestler, crying over his useless muscles. But he contrasts that with the mental power of someone like Pythagoras. The message is clear. Enjoy strength while you have it, sure, but don't grieve when it naturally fades. Acceptance again.
He does mention King Massinissa, though, who is apparently incredibly vigorous at 90.
Right. Still doing all his kingly duties himself thanks to exercise and self-control. So while decline happens, you can influence the pace, maintain some vitality with effort.
And it's not like only old people get sick, is it?
Exactly. Yeah. Cicero makes that point. Even the young cannot escape infirmity. Illness can strike any time. So the real advice isn't about somehow stopping physical aging, but about managing it. Fight against old age through reasonable care, moderate exercise, eating well, not overdoing it, maintenance, basically.
But then he adds something crucial. He says, okay, care for your body, but care even more for your mind and spirit. He uses that image of a lamp needing oil, right?
Yeah.
That our minds and spirits will dim if we don't keep replenishing them.
It's such a powerful metaphor. Mental and spiritual vitality needs constant fuel, constant engagement.
Which brings us to the third big objection. And this one feels, well, pretty radical in how Cicero reframes it. The complaint is that old age deprives us of almost all sensual pleasures.
And Cicero's response through Cato, he says this isn't a loss at all. It's a glorious gift.
A gift? That sounds counterintuitive. How does he argue that?
He quotes an earlier philosopher, Archytas, who apparently argued that intense physical desire, especially sexual desire, is like a fatal curse. Archytas believed it leads to uncontrollable passions, reckless behavior, even betraying your country or overthrowing governments. It just darkens the soul.
And Plato called pleasure the bait of evil. Wow, yeah. Strong words.
Very strong. And Cicero even gives a real-life Roman example, a guy named Lucius Flamininus who got kicked out of the Senate. Why? Because apparently during a banquet, he had a prisoner executed just to please a prostitute he was with.
Seriously?
Yeah, a grim story, but it illustrates Cicero's point. Unchecked sensual pleasure can lead to terrible things, so its reduction can actually be seen as a positive.
Okay, I think I see the logic now. It's not about missing out, it's about being liberated from those potentially destructive desires. So the reduction of sensual appetites gives us room to enjoy other aspects of life that are much more satisfying and lasting.
Precisely. And his simple line, if you don't long for something, you don't miss it. It's about finding contentment beyond just physical gratification.
So what kinds of pleasures does he see replacing those intense ones?
Well, things like moderate dinners, good food, good company, and especially good conversation. Yeah. He points out the Roman word for a feast or gathering was convivium, which means a living together, much richer than just eating together or drinking together. It highlights the social and intellectual joy.
And he talks a lot about farming, doesn't he, as a source of real joy in old age.
Oh, absolutely. He gets almost poetic describing the earth, planting seeds, watching things grow. He calls it like having a bank account with the earth itself, one that always pays back with interest.
That's a lovely image. It suggests purpose, connection to nature, a quiet satisfaction.
And again, it wasn't just theory. He points to famous Romans like Cincinnatus, the guy found plowing his field when they made him dictator. Figures like him apparently found great happiness in farming after their public lives were over. It shows meaningful activity doesn't just stop.
Okay, that leads us to the fourth, and maybe the biggest, objection. The fear of death. The idea that old age means death is just around the corner.
Right, and Cicero, again, through Cato, comes out swinging. Wretched indeed is the man who, in the course of a long life, has not learned that death is nothing to be feared.
Nothing to be feared. How does he justify that?
He lays out two possibilities, and only two. One, death completely destroys the soul. If that's true, it's negligible, there's nothing to experience, good or bad, so nothing to fear. Or two, death takes the soul somewhere it can live forever, in which case, he argues, it's actually desirable.
So either it's nothing or it's something good. No third option, no room for terror in his logic.
That's the framework he presents, yes, aiming to dismantle the fear logically.
And he makes that sobering point, too, that young people are actually more likely to die from accidents.
Yeah, he brings in his own painful experience losing his son, mentioning others who lost siblings young. Death isn't just for the old, it's unpredictable.
The analogies he uses for death and old age are quite gentle, aren't they?
They really are. A young person dying is like a fire violently put out by water. An old person, like a flame gently flickering out on its own, or like ripe fruit falling naturally from a tree versus being picked green.
And life being like a play. A good actor knows when it's time to exit gracefully.
Exactly. Trying to make death feel like a natural, timely conclusion, not a catastrophe.
He also delves into philosophy quite a bit here about the soul being immortal.
Yes, Cicero himself found these arguments really persuasive. He mentions Pythagoras, Plato. Plato argued the soul's speed, its memory, its creativity, all signs it's not just physical, not mortal, its constant motion, its indivisible nature. These suggested to Plato that it lasts forever.
And he mentions Cyrus the Elder, too.
Right, from Xenophon's account. Cyrus on his deathbed convinced his soul would live on, that the glory of great people persists. But what's really moving is Cato's personal take. He says his belief that he'll be reunited with his dead son. That belief brings him comfort. And then that famous line, even if I'm wrong about immortality, gladly do I err, for this belief makes me happy. Hope itself has value.
So after tackling all those fears and complaints, what does Cicero say is the big payoff for a life well lived into old age?
The crowning glory of old age, Cato declares, is respect. Auctoritas.
And what did that look like in ancient Rome?
He lists specific things. People visiting you in the morning, asking for meetings, standing up when you enter, making way for you in public, escorting you, asking for your advice. Real, tangible signs of deference.
He tells that story about the Spartans too, right?
Yes. At the theater in Athens, an old Athenian man is looking for a seat. None of his countrymen make room. But when he gets to the Spartan section, they all stand up for him. And one Spartan remarks, "These Athenians know what's right, but they don't do it." A pointed lesson about actually showing respect for age.
But there's a huge but here, isn't there? It's not automatic.
Absolutely crucial point. Cato warns, wrinkles and gray hair cannot suddenly demand respect. You don't just get it because you're old. Only when the earlier years of life have been well spent does old age at last gather the fruits of admiration. It has to be earned through a lifetime of character.
Which connects back to the very beginning. And what about those stereotypes of grumpy, miserly old people?
Cato addresses that directly. He says those traits being morose, anxious, ill-tempered, hard to please, even miserly, those are faults of character, not of age. Your basic personality, he suggests, like wine, does not necessarily grow sour with age. If someone's unpleasant when they're old, they were probably unpleasant when they were young, too. It's not aging itself doing it.
Wow, so there you have it. Cicero's wisdom, passed down through the ages. It really does offer a completely different way to think about getting older, doesn't it?
It's such a powerful counter-narrative to all the modern anxiety. It reframes aging away from just decline towards potential, wisdom, even a kind of liberation.
Yeah, this deep dive really gives you, I think, a more informed, maybe a more hopeful perspective on that whole second half of life.
Hopefully it turns it from something you might dread into a phase you could actually embrace, maybe even look forward to in some ways.
So here's a final thought to leave you with, drawing from Cicero. If old age is the final act in the play of life, what kind of performance are you getting ready for? How can embracing this idea of a season of harvesting and storing away not just crops, but wisdom and peace help you enjoy your own later years fully, just like Cicero hoped? Something to think about.